I was driving through the city, lost in thought, when I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a perfect evening, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the streets. I was in a good mood, heading home after a long day. But then, through the windshield of my car, I spotted something that made me question my sanity. There, standing by the grand statue in the city square, was my wife, Sophia. She was wearing the elegant dress I had given her for our anniversary, the one I had spent weeks picking out. Convinced it would make her feel as special as she truly was. But my heart sank as I saw her in that same dress, wrapped in the arms of another man. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The world outside my car blurred into a haze as I focused on the scene unfolding before me. The man, tall and with a casual ease that I found deeply infuriating, had his arms around Sophia. They were laughing and talking closely, their faces mere inches apart. She was smiling, a genuine, radiant smile that I hadn't seen in a long time. And it was all directed at someone who wasn't me. I pulled the car over to the side of the road, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. The disbelief was almost unbearable. I blinked, hoping it would all be a cruel trick of the light, but when I looked again, the scene was still there. Sophia's laughter pierced through the veil of my denial. In a daze, I reached for my phone and snapped a few pictures, my fingers moving almost automatically. Each click of the camera felt like a hammer hitting my chest. I needed evidence, something solid to ground me in this nightmare. As I stared at the photos, trying to make sense of the images, a cold realization settled over me. This was no fluke or misunderstanding. My wife, the woman I trusted above all else, was with another man. And the worst part was that she seemed completely at ease, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. My mind raced through a tumult of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion. I felt like I was losing control, spiraling into a chasm of hurt and disbelief. How had it come to this? How had our life together led to this moment of gut-wrenching pain? With a heavy heart, I knew I had to make a decision. I needed to confront this head-on, but for now, I had to regain some semblance of composure. I started the car and drove away from the square, the image of Sophia and her lover etched into my mind. The world outside was just as I had left it, bright and full of life, while my own world felt as though it had crumbled into a million pieces. The road stretched ahead, but the path I had once known now seemed uncertain, marked by the jagged edges of betrayal. I drove aimlessly, barely registering the streets that blurred past my window. The only thing on my mind was the image of Sophia, her arm entwined with another man's. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white from the force. I needed to get away from that square, away from the suffocating realization that my life had been turned upside down. Eventually, I pulled into a small cafe on a quiet corner. The place was cozy, a stark contrast to the chaos raging inside me. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, staring blankly at the quaint, welcoming facade. It was as if this little haven was mocking my turmoil, offering a semblance of calm that I couldn't embrace. I stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling softly as I entered. The aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods filled the air, but it did little to soothe me. I chose a seat by the window, hoping that the view would offer some distraction. But all I could see was the reflection of the man who had shattered my world. As I sat there, I pulled out my phone and reviewed the photos I had taken. The images were crystal clear, each one capturing the intimate moments between Sophia and her companion. The man's arm around her, their heads closed together, her eyes sparkling with a happiness that was not meant for me. It was all there, undeniable and painful. I scrolled through the pictures, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I needed to be sure. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a harmless, innocent interaction. But no, each photograph only confirmed the worst. There was no ambiguity, the evidence was right there in front of me. My coffee arrived, but I barely noticed it. I pushed it aside, lost in a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions.
The cafe's chatter and clinking of cups felt distant, irrelevant.
I was trapped in my own head, grappling with the crushing weight of betrayal. I knew I had to face the truth, no matter how much it hurt. This was no longer a question of doubt, it was a stark reality that I had to confront.
The thought of approaching Sophia, of discussing this with her, felt like an insurmountable challenge.
Yet, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. Taking a deep breath, I tried to steady myself. The truth was out there, undeniable and raw. I needed to process it, to find a way to move forward from this point of devastation.
The photos on my phone were more than just images, they were the evidence of a broken trust.
And they would guide me through the next steps I had to take.
The cafe's soft hum was a poor backdrop for the storm raging in my mind.
I took another deep breath, trying to center myself amidst the chaos. I needed to talk to someone, to process what I had seen and felt. My thoughts raced, but one name kept echoing through the turmoil: John.
I pulled out my phone and dialed his number, the familiar tone of the ringtone barely registering as I waited.
When he answered, his voice was a calming presence. A stark contrast to the turmoil inside me.
"Hey, John, it's Nick," I said, my voice cracking slightly.
"I need to talk." "Nick? What's going on?"
John's voice was full of concern, and I could hear him shifting to a more serious tone.
I paused, trying to steady my voice. "I just saw Sophia. She was with another guy, by the monument. The dress I gave her, she was wearing it." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. John was probably processing what I had just told him, struggling to reconcile his perception of Sophia with the shocking news. "Nick, are you sure?" John finally asked.
"I mean, you saw them together? What exactly happened?"
"I have pictures," I replied, frustration seeping into my voice.
"They were so close, laughing, talking. It's all right here."
I glanced at the photos on my phone, which lay on the table before me. Okay, John said, his tone soothing. "Look, I understand you're upset. This is a lot to take in, and I'm sure it feels like the end of the world right now. But before you do anything drastic, let's take a step back." I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of his words.
"What do you mean?"
"Take a breath," John said firmly. "I know it's hard, but you need to calm down and think this through.
Don't make any decisions in the heat of the moment.
You're angry and hurt, and that's understandable, but reacting impulsively could make things worse."
"Like what?"
I asked, my voice tinged with skepticism. "Like confronting Sophia without knowing the full story. Or making moves you might regret," he explained. "You've got the evidence, but it's not the whole picture. Give yourself some time to process this. Talk to Sophia when you're calmer. You deserve to get the complete truth before making any decisions." I sighed heavily, feeling the sting of his advice but also recognizing its wisdom.
"You're right.
I don't even know what to say to her right now. I'm just so angry." "I get it," John said. "Take the night to cool off. Think things through. I'm here for you, whatever you decide."
"Just don't act out of anger." "Thanks, John," I said, feeling a flicker of relief.
I needed to hear that.
After we hung up, I stared out the cafe window, trying to absorb John's advice.
The city outside continued its routine, indifferent to the personal drama unfolding within. I needed to give myself the space to think clearly and not let my immediate anger dictate my actions. The realization that I had to approach the situation with a clear head was sobering.
The next steps would require patience and careful consideration.
For now, I would focus on finding some semblance of peace amidst the storm, preparing myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. I left the cafe with a heavy heart and a mind teeming with conflicted thoughts. John's advice had calmed me, but the anger and betrayal I felt were still searing through me. The images of Sophia and her lover played on a relentless loop in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling of being deceived, of having my trust shattered by someone I had once held so dear. As I drove home, my resolve hardened.
I had decided that I wouldn't be a passive victim in this story. If Sophia could betray me, then I would take control of my own narrative. I swore to myself that I would find a way to make her understand the depth of her betrayal, even if it meant exacting my own form of retribution. The idea of revenge took root in my mind. It was a notion that both fascinated and terrified me. I needed to conduct my own investigation, to understand the full extent of Sophia's infidelity and what led her to this point. But more than that, I needed a way to make her feel the sting of betrayal as deeply as I did. Over the next few days, I immersed myself in a covert investigation. I started by analyzing the photos I had taken. Every detail was scrutinized, the way they interacted, the locations they visited. I needed to learn more about the man in the photos, who he was, and how he had become entangled with Sophia. I hired a private investigator to dig into Sophia's recent activities and relationships. I wanted to know everything about her clandestine meetings and the people she had been involved with. It wasn't just about gathering evidence, it was about understanding the motives and patterns that led to this betrayal. But alongside the investigation, I nurtured another plan, a plan of personal vengeance. I resolved to find someone else, someone to fill the void left by Sophia's betrayal. I wasn't interested in a meaningful relationship or genuine connection. I wanted something transient. Something that would make Sophia feel the sting of her own actions. I started frequenting social events, online dating apps, and casual hangouts. I was on the lookout for someone who could fit into this role, someone who would be a means to my end. It wasn't just about finding another partner, it was about making a statement, about showing Sophia that I too could seek solace in the arms of someone else. The search became a distraction, a way to channel my anger into something tangible. Each date and encounter was tainted by the underlying motive of revenge. I wasn't looking for love, I was looking for a way to balance the scales, to make Sophia understand the weight of her actions. This plan of retribution was both a source of empowerment and a sign of my inner turmoil. It was a way to take back control, to assert my worth and my ability to move on from this betrayal. But beneath the surface, I knew it was also a desperate attempt to cope with the hurt and anger that threatened to consume me. As I prepared to confront Sophia with the evidence of her infidelity, I knew that this plan was only one part of a much larger journey. It was a path marked by anger, revenge, and the slow process of healing. And as I walked this path, I hoped that eventually, I would find a way to reclaim my sense of self and move forward from the shadows of betrayal. The days after my vow of retribution were a whirlwind of activity and planning. My investigation into Sophia's life took a more formal turn when I decided to hire a private detective. I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal, the patterns of her meetings with this other man, and the nature of their connection. I contacted a private detective named Alex, whose reputation for thoroughness and discretion preceded him. We met in a quiet coffee shop, far from the prying eyes of anyone who might know me. I handed over the photos and provided Alex with all the details I had gathered. His calm demeanor and focused eyes reassured me that I had chosen the right person for the job. "I need to know everything," I told him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "How often they meet, where they go, and what exactly is happening between them?" "I want a complete picture." Alex nodded, taking notes as I spoke. "I'll start by following them and documenting their interactions. I'll provide you with detailed reports and photographs of their activities. It might take a few days to get a clear picture, but I'll keep you updated." With the detective on the case, I tried to keep myself occupied with other tasks. But the anticipation of the findings weighed heavily on me. Every phone call or text from Alex set my heart racing. I was eager to learn more, but the waiting was torturous. A few days later, Alex contacted me with an update. We met again at the coffee shop, where he handed me a folder filled with photographs and detailed notes. "They meet frequently," Alex began, flipping through the pages. "I've documented several outings over the past week. They've been to a few restaurants, a couple of parks, and even an art gallery. Their interactions are consistently intimate, lots of close conversation, laughter, and physical contact.
I scanned the photos and notes, each one a painful reminder of Sophia's betrayal.
There were images of her and the man, David, enjoying dinners together, walking hand in hand, and sharing intimate moments.
The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Do you have any sense of how serious this is?
I asked, trying to control my emotions. It's hard to say for sure, Alex replied. But from the way they interact, it seems like their relationship is more than just a casual fling. There's a level of emotional connection that suggests they've been seeing each other for a while.
The information was both confirming and crushing. I had suspected that their relationship was serious, but seeing it laid out in black and white made it all the more real. "Thank you, Alex," I said, trying to keep my voice steady.
This is exactly what I needed to know.
As Alex left, I sat in the coffee shop, alone with my thoughts.
The details of their relationship were clear, and the betrayal felt even more profound. The investigation had provided me with answers, but it also left me grappling with the weight of the truth.
The knowledge of their ongoing connection fueled my determination for retribution. I now had a clearer picture of what I was up against and a stronger resolve to see my plan through. But as I prepared to confront Sophia, I couldn't shake the feeling that this journey of revenge was also a path toward understanding and healing.
The detectives' reports had given me the tools I needed, but they also made me reflect on the nature of trust and betrayal.
I was inching closer to the confrontation, ready to face Sophia with the evidence of her actions, but the road ahead was still fraught with emotional complexity. The days following my receipt of the detectives' reports were a blur of confusion and determination. The detailed observations of Sophia's meetings with David had only deepened the chasm of betrayal I felt. But as I continued to process the information, something unexpected happened that would shift the course of my investigation. One afternoon, while reviewing the latest findings, I stumbled upon a surprising development. During a routine check of Sophia's social media, I noticed an interaction with someone named Mike, a mutual friend who often appeared in her posts. Curious about how someone in her social circle might be connected to her actions, I decided to dig a little deeper. I learned that Mike frequently met Sophia and had been a close friend for years.
A plan began to form in my mind.
If Mike was indeed a close confidant, he might inadvertently provide insights into Sophia's life and relationships that I hadn't yet uncovered. I decided to approach him, hoping that he could shed some light on the situation. I arranged to meet Mike under the guise of a casual catch-up. I found a quiet bar where we could talk privately, away from the prying eyes of Sophia or anyone who might know us both. As I arrived, I spotted Mike already seated at a table. His expression a mix of curiosity and friendliness. I could tell he was wondering why I had reached out. "Hey, Mike," I said as I approached.
"Thanks for meeting me.
I know it's been a while." "Nick, good to see you," Mike replied, offering a handshake.
"What's up?"
"You seemed pretty insistent on meeting." We ordered drinks and started chatting about old times, trying to ease into the conversation. I carefully steered the discussion towards Sophia, mentioning how I'd seen her recently and how surprised I was to see her so involved with someone new. Mike's demeanor shifted slightly, as if he was weighing whether to share something personal.
"Yeah, Sophia's been different lately," he said cautiously.
"She's been seeing David a lot, but I didn't know it was so serious." I nodded, probing gently. "Do you know if there's more going on? Any other connections or changes in her life that I might not be aware of?" Mike hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Well, actually, there's more to it. Sophia's been involved with a few other people recently. It's like she's been leading a double life. I think she's been keeping a lot hidden from everyone, not just you." My heart raced as Mike continued. I overheard her talking about feeling trapped in her current situation and wanting a fresh start. I didn't realize it was this deep, though. The information was a revelation. It wasn't just about David. Sophia had been entangled in multiple secret relationships. Mike's insights painted a picture of someone who was struggling with her own choices and clearly wasn't forthcoming about her true feelings.
Why didn't you say anything before?
I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Mike shrugged, looking uncomfortable. I didn't know how to approach it. And honestly, I didn't want to get involved in her personal issues.
But now that I see how things are affecting you, I figured you deserved to know.
I appreciated Mike's honesty, even if it was uncomfortable. His unexpected revelation added layers to my understanding of Sophia's situation and provided a new perspective on her actions. Thanks for being upfront with me, I said sincerely. This helps a lot.
As we wrapped up our conversation, I realized that Mike's information was both enlightening and painful. It confirmed that Sophia had been living a complicated, deceptive life, but it also underscored the need for a more nuanced approach to the situation.
The details Mike shared were crucial in shaping my next steps.
As I left the bar, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness.
The path to confrontation and resolution was becoming clearer.
But it was also marked by deeper emotional complexities than I had anticipated.
With Mike's unexpected help, I was one step closer to understanding the full scope of Sophia's actions and the impact they had on my own life.
With each new piece of information, the picture of Sophia's betrayal grew more complex, and so did my resolve to confront her.
I knew that I couldn't approach this situation with raw emotion alone. I needed to be methodical, armed with undeniable evidence that would force her to face the truth. It was time to compile everything I had gathered into a comprehensive dossier, something that would leave no room for denial or excuses. I began by organizing the photographs taken by the private detective.
These were the most damning pieces of evidence, capturing Sophia and David in various intimate settings.
Each image was a stark reminder of the connection they shared, and as I arranged them chronologically, I could see the evolution of their relationship in stark detail. The images told a story of their deepening bond, one that had clearly been nurtured over time.
Next, I included the notes and reports from Alex, the private detective. His observations were meticulous, providing context to the photographs and documenting the frequency of their meetings, the places they visited, and the nature of their interactions. The reports painted a picture of a relationship that was more than just a passing affair. It was an ongoing, emotional connection that Sophia had kept hidden from me.
But the most surprising and impactful addition to the dossier came from my conversation with Mike. His revelations about Sophia's other secret relationships and her feelings of being trapped added a new dimension to the situation. I transcribed our conversation, carefully noting his words about her double life and her desire for a fresh start. Mike's insights provided a glimpse into Sophia's mindset, something that the photographs and reports alone couldn't convey. As I compiled all of this information, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of closure. The dossier was more than just evidence of infidelity. It was a comprehensive account of Sophia's actions and the web of deceit she had woven around herself. It was painful to put it all together, but it also gave me a sense of control, a way to channel my emotions into something tangible. The final document was a thorough, detailed account of Sophia's infidelity, complete with photographs, reports, and personal testimonies. It was a dossier that left no room for doubt, no space for denial. I knew that when the time came to confront her, this would be my trump card, the undeniable truth that would force her to confront the consequences of her actions. As I finished the last page, I sat back and looked at the stack of papers before me. This wasn't just a collection of evidence, it was the culmination of weeks of turmoil, investigation, and introspection. It represented not only Sophia's betrayal but also my journey through anger, hurt, and the need for retribution. The dossier was now ready. And so was I. The next step would be the most difficult one yet, confronting Sophia with the truth, armed with the evidence that would expose her double life and force her to reckon with the pain she had caused. The time had come to confront Sophia and her lover, David, with the undeniable truth. After weeks of gathering evidence and steeling myself for this moment, I was ready to expose their betrayal for what it was. I knew that this confrontation had to be public and carefully orchestrated to ensure there was no escape from the truth.
I chose a venue that held personal significance, a cozy, intimate cafe where Sophia and I had often spent time together. It was a place filled with memories of happier days, but today it would serve as the backdrop for the unraveling of those memories. I contacted both Sophia and David separately, arranging a meeting with each of them, ensuring they would arrive at the same time without knowing the other was coming. The day of the confrontation arrived.
I arrived early and positioned myself at a corner table with a clear view of the entrance.
The dossier containing all the evidence I had meticulously compiled lay on the table in front of me, a silent but potent weapon. Sophia arrived first, looking as radiant as ever, though I now saw her in a different light.
She wore the same dress she had been wearing the day I first saw her with David, the one I had given her as a gift.
Seeing her in it now filled me with a mix of anger and sadness.
She smiled as she approached me, completely unaware of what was about to unfold. "Nick, this is a surprise," she said, sitting down across from me.
Her tone was light, but I could see a hint of nervousness in her eyes. Before I could respond, David walked in. The moment he saw Sophia sitting with me, his face turned pale.
He stopped in his tracks, clearly caught off guard.
"David," I said, gesturing to the seat beside Sophia.
"Join us. There's something we need to discuss." Sophia looked at me, then at David, confusion and panic beginning to cloud her expression. "Nick, what's going on?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I opened the dossier and slid it across the table toward them.
"This," I said, my voice cold and controlled, "is what's going on."
Sophia hesitated, her hand trembling as she opened the folder. The color drained from her face as she saw the photographs, the detective's reports, and the transcript of my conversation with Mike. Each page was a piece of the puzzle that exposed her deception. David leaned in to look, his eyes widening as he realized the gravity of the situation. What is this?" he stammered. Though he clearly understood. "This," I said, my voice rising just enough to convey the weight of the moment, "is everything you two have been hiding from me. Every secret meeting, every lie, every moment of betrayal. I know about all of it." Sophia's hands shook as she clutched the pages, her eyes darting between me and David, searching for an escape. But there was none. The evidence was irrefutable, and she knew it. "Nick, Sophia began, her voice breaking. But she couldn't find the words. The shock and guilt were written all over her face. "You lied to me, Sophia," I continued, my tone hardening. "You led a double life, pretending everything was fine while sneaking around with him." I pointed at David, whose face was now a mask of regret and fear. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, her composure crumbling under the weight of the truth. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I'm so sorry." "Sorry?" I echoed, my voice thick with disbelief. "Sorry doesn't erase what you've done. You made your choices, Sophia. Now you have to live with the consequences." As I walked away from the cafe, Sophia's desperate voice echoed in my ears, pulling me back into the storm I was trying to leave behind. I had expected anger, maybe even denial, but the panic in her voice was something different, something that gnawed at me despite everything. I didn't get far before I heard her footsteps behind me. "Nick, wait!" she called out, her voice trembling. I stopped, my back still turned to her, trying to muster the strength to keep walking. But something made me pause, and I found myself slowly turning around to face her. Sophia was a mess, tears streaming down her face, her makeup smudged, and her hands shaking as she reached out to me. "Please, Nick, you have to listen to me," she pleaded. "I know I messed up, but you have to understand. It wasn't just about David, or anyone else. It was about us. About how lost I've felt, how distant you've been." Her words hit me harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to lash out, to tell her that nothing could justify what she'd done. But another part of me, one that still remembered the good times we'd shared, couldn't help but listen. I didn't want it to be like this, she continued, her voice cracking. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to fix what was broken between us. And then David, he was just there, and I cut her off, raising a hand. Sophia, stop. My voice was firmer than I felt. Don't try to make excuses for this. You had a choice, and you chose to betray me. Whatever problems we had, this wasn't the answer. I know, she whispered, her head dropping in shame. I know, Nick. But I can't lose you. Please, we can try again. We can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. Her words, once so powerful, now felt hollow.
The idea of trying to mend what had been shattered seemed impossible, even if a part of me wished it could be that simple.
I stared at her, weighing the options that lay before me. I could walk away. Leave her to deal with the mess she'd created, or I could stay and try to rebuild something that might never be whole again. But neither of those choices seemed to bring me any peace. And then, almost without thinking, I found myself saying, "You know what, Sophia? Maybe I should do the same thing you did. Maybe I should go out, find someone else, and see how it feels." Her eyes widened in shock. "Nick, no, you wouldn't."
Why not?
I challenged, my voice colder than I intended. "You had your fun.
So why shouldn't I?
Maybe then you'd understand just how much it hurts." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and full of meaning. Part of me wanted to hurt her as much as she'd hurt me, to show her that actions have consequences. But as I stood there, looking at the woman I'd once loved so deeply, I realized something. Revenge wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't heal the wounds she'd caused or erase the betrayal. It would only drag us both further into a cycle of pain and resentment. Sophia looked at me, her face a mixture of fear and regret. "Nick, please. I don't want to lose you. I'm begging you. Don't do this." I sighed, the anger slowly draining out of me, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. "Sophia, you've already lost me," I said quietly. "And I've lost you too, a long time ago. What's left isn't worth saving, not like this." After the confrontation with Sophia, I felt a crushing weight bearing down on me. Every corner of the city seemed to echo with memories of us. Memories I desperately wanted to escape. The idea of staying and wallowing in the wreckage of what we once had was unbearable. I needed a break, a complete reset. So, without overthinking it, I booked a last-minute trip to a place far enough away to make me feel like I was starting over, Miami. The plane ride was a blur. My mind was still spinning with the events that had unfolded, but I had a new plan forming in the back of my mind. Sophia had betrayed me, and though I had told her I wouldn't seek revenge, the truth was, I wasn't done with her just yet. If she wanted to play games, I could too, and I knew just how to make it hurt. Miami was everything I needed it to be: warm, vibrant, and full of life. The beaches were stunning, the nightlife electric, and the anonymity of being just another face in the crowd was liberating. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of freedom, as if I was finally stepping out from under a dark cloud. But I wasn't here just to relax. I had a purpose. I wasn't going to let Sophia get away with what she did without feeling the sting of her own betrayal. If she could be with someone else, so could I, and I was going to make sure she knew all about it. The first few days in Miami were about unwinding, getting a feel for the place, and scouting out the perfect spot for my plan. I spent time at the beach, soaking in the sun, but my mind was always working in the background, thinking about how to execute my idea. I knew Sophia kept tabs on me. She was too paranoid not to. It wouldn't be hard to ensure she found out what I was up to. On the third day, I met Kate. She was everything Sophia wasn't: carefree, spontaneous, and utterly uninterested in playing mind games. We met at a bar in South Beach, where the music was loud, and the drinks were strong. She had a smile that could light up the darkest room, and for a moment, I forgot all about my plan. But I couldn't afford to forget. As we talked, flirted, and eventually danced, I knew Kate was the perfect person to help me carry out my revenge.
Not because she deserved to be used, but because she represented something fresh and new, a stark contrast to everything Sophia and I had become.
As the night wore on, we ended up back at my hotel. Things moved quickly from there, as they often do when two people are looking to escape something.
But as we lay together afterward, I made sure to snap a few photos, nothing too explicit, but just enough to suggest what had happened.
I wasn't proud of it, but in that moment, it felt necessary. The next morning, I posted one of the pictures on social media. It was a shot of Kate and me at the beach, her head resting on my shoulder, both of us smiling. The caption was simple, "Living my best life in Miami." I knew Sophia would see it. She checked my profile regularly, and I made sure the post was public. It didn't take long. By the afternoon, I had a message from her, a single word, "Really?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The point had been made. She needed to know that I could move on. That I could find someone else, just as easily as she had. Maybe it was petty, maybe it was cruel, but it gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction. Over the next few days, I spent more time with Kate. She was fun, uncomplicated, and exactly what I needed in the moment. We explored Miami together, and though I enjoyed her company, I never lost sight of why I had come here in the first place. Every time I posted another photo of us, at a restaurant, by the pool, on a boat, I knew Sophia was seeing it. I knew it was driving her crazy, just as she had driven me crazy with her lies and deceit. But as the days passed, something unexpected happened. I started to feel a twinge of guilt. Kate had no idea what was really going on, and she didn't deserve to be part of my revenge scheme. She was just a good person who happened to walk into my life at the right time, or maybe the wrong time, depending on how you looked at it. By the end of the week, I realized that what I was doing wasn't just hurting Sophia, it was hurting me too. Revenge wasn't giving me the closure I thought it would. If anything, it was keeping me tied to Sophia and the pain she'd caused, preventing me from truly moving on. On my last night in Miami, as Kate and I watched the sunset over the ocean, I made a decision. When I got back home, I would let go of this vendetta once and for all. I would cut ties with Sophia completely and focus on rebuilding my life, not just on tearing hers down. Kate and I parted ways on good terms. She had been a breath of fresh air, and I was grateful for the time we spent together. But I knew I needed to go back home alone, to start fresh without any lingering baggage from the past. As my plane took off, leaving the bright lights of Miami behind, I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in months. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I was okay with that. I was done with revenge. It was time to focus on me. When I returned from Miami, I felt different, lighter, perhaps, but also more resolute. The sun and sand had done their job, giving me clarity and perspective I hadn't had in months. I knew what I had to do next, meet with Sophia one last time, not to rekindle anything, but to close the door on what we once had. I arranged to meet her at a small park not far from where we used to live. It was a place we'd often gone together, a place that once held fond memories. Now, it was the perfect setting to end what was left of us. Sophia arrived before I did, sitting on a bench under the shade of a large oak tree. She looked as though she hadn't slept much since our last encounter. Her face was pale, and there was a weariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. When she saw me approaching, she tried to smile, but it was a weak, fragile thing. "Nick," she greeted me softly, standing up as I reached her. There was a nervous energy in the way she held herself, as if she didn't know what to expect. I nodded, acknowledging her with a small smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Sophia," I said, my voice steady. "Thanks for meeting me." We stood there for a moment in silence, the weight of everything that had happened between us hanging in the air. Finally, I gestured for her to sit back down, and I took a seat beside her, leaving a small, deliberate distance between us. "I wanted to see you," I began, "because there are some things I need to say, and I think it's important that you hear them." Sophia looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and dread. "Okay," she said quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I took a deep breath, organizing my thoughts. When I saw you with David that day, it broke something in me. I don't think I can fully explain how much it hurt, but you've probably felt a bit of that pain yourself by now.
Sophia flinched at my words, her eyes flickering with understanding.
She knew exactly what I was referring to, those pictures I had posted, the carefully crafted moments that I knew would reach her. I saw the photos, she admitted, her voice trembling. It hurt, Nick. It really did. But I guess I deserved it.
I nodded slowly. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
But I needed you to feel what I felt, to understand the depth of the betrayal. I'm not proud of what I did, Sophia. It wasn't the right way to handle things, and I realize that now.
But in the moment, it felt like the only way to get through to you. She looked down, her expression one of deep regret.
I understand. I wish I could take back everything I did, but I know I can't. You're right,
I replied, my tone firm but not unkind.
We can't change what happened. And we can't go back to the way things were. Too much has been broken, and I don't think it's something that can be repaired. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes, and she nodded, accepting the truth of my words.
So, where do we go from here?
I looked at her, seeing the woman I had once loved, but also recognizing that she was now a stranger to me in many ways. We go our separate ways, I said gently. You live your life. And I'll live mine.
Maybe someday, we'll both find peace with everything that's happened.
But for now, we need to move on. I need to move on.
Sophia wiped away a tear, her voice barely above a whisper.
I wish things could have been different, Nick. So do I admitted, feeling a pang of sadness for what might have been.
But they aren't.
And that's something we both have to accept.
We sat there in silence for a while, both of us lost in our own thoughts.
The park around us was quiet.
The gentle rustling of leaves the only sound filling the space between us.
Finally, I stood up, signaling that it was time to go. I wish you the best, Sophia, I said, looking down at her one last time. I really do. But this is where our story ends. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with sorrow but also with a glimmer of understanding.
Goodbye, Nick, she whispered. Without another word, I turned and walked away, feeling a strange sense of finality wash over me. I had said what needed to be said.
And I had done what needed to be done.
There was no turning back now, no lingering doubts or unresolved issues. This chapter of my life was finally closed, and it was time to start writing the next one. As I left the park, I felt a sense of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from my shoulders.
The pain was still there, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was just a part of my past, something I would carry with me, but not something that would define me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. With my final meeting with Sophia behind me, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The weight of the past had finally been lifted, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I had a clear view of the path ahead. I realized that I had been so consumed by anger and betrayal that I had lost sight of myself and the things that truly mattered to me. It was time to change that. I decided to focus on the aspects of my life that I had neglected for far too long, my personal growth, my career, and my passions. There was no better time to reinvent myself and rebuild my life from the ground up. It was an opportunity to take back control and to create a future that wasn't defined by the pain of the past. First, I took a long, hard look at my career. I had been coasting for years, doing just enough to get by, but never really pushing myself to reach my full potential. That was about to change. I started by setting clear, ambitious goals for myself. I wanted to advance in my field, to take on more responsibility, and to push the boundaries of what I thought I was capable of. I enrolled in a few professional development courses, eager to sharpen my skills and expand my knowledge. It felt good to be proactive, to be taking steps that would lead to tangible improvements in my career. I also began networking more, reconnecting with old colleagues and making new connections that could help me in my journey forward. It wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder, it was about rediscovering my passion for what I did and finding fulfillment in my work again. But it wasn't all about my career. I knew that personal growth was just as important, if not more so. I started dedicating time to hobbies and interests that I had let slip away over the years. I picked up my guitar again, the one that had been gathering dust in the corner of my living room.
Music had always been a source of joy for me, and it felt good to reconnect with that part of myself.
I also made a commitment to my physical health. I joined a gym, something I had been meaning to do for ages but kept putting off. It wasn't just about getting in shape, it was about feeling better, both physically and mentally. The discipline and routine of working out became a cornerstone of my new life. A way to channel my energy into something positive. Socially, I started to branch out, reconnecting with old friends and making an effort to meet new people. I had spent too long isolated in my pain, and it was time to rejoin the world. I started going to social events, accepting invitations I would have previously declined, and even joined a few clubs and groups that aligned with my interests. It wasn't easy at first. I was still healing, still learning how to trust again, but with each new interaction, I felt a little more like myself. As the weeks turned into months, I began to notice real changes. I was more confident, more focused, and more at peace with myself. I was no longer defined by what had happened with Sophia. Instead, I was defined by the choices I was making now, the steps I was taking to build a better future. I had learned a lot from the pain and betrayal, and while I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone, I knew it had made me stronger, more resilient. I also started thinking about the future in a way that I hadn't before. For so long, my life had been about reacting to the pain, but now I was ready to start planning, to start dreaming again. I began to set new goals, not just for my career and my personal life, but for the kind of person I wanted to be, the kind of life I wanted to live. There were still moments of doubt, of course. Healing is a process, and there were days when the memories of Sophia and what had happened would creep back in. But those moments were becoming fewer and farther between, and when they did come, they didn't hold the same power over me that they once had. I had moved on, not just from Sophia, but from the person I had been when I was with her. Looking back, I realized that what I had gone through was a kind of rebirth. The old me had been shattered, but in the process, I had been given the chance to rebuild, to become someone stronger, wiser, and more self-assured. The past was still there, a part of my story, but it no longer dictated my future. As I stood at the threshold of this new chapter in my life, I felt a sense of excitement and anticipation that I hadn't felt in years. The possibilities were endless, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to embrace them. The path ahead was mine to create, and I knew that whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it with courage and determination. I was finally free, and it felt good.